Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining today's webinar. So today we'll be talking about health and safety within Formatize and how to use different features to be able to cover off these elements in your business. You might find those tips helpful in other areas as well. So let's get started. So in health and safety as a tool, there are lots of different elements that you may be using when you're going about the day-to-day running of your business. So you can use different elements of Formatize to be able to manage this. One of those things are forms. So today we'll be having a look at the form bank and the different forms that are available, as well as also looking at the different ways you can build forms, also looking at resources and user profiles where you can upload different documents. So first off, we'll have a look at the user profile and training and qualifications. So as an admin user or someone with permission to the user element, you can have a look at the users, obviously add users onto the account. So within each user profile, so in users and view users, you can see the users that you have on your account and then use the edit functionality to be able to add extra information within that user profile, be able to control permissions and the like. So you'll see that there are varied amounts of information that is available on the user profile. So using the blue pencil to be able to edit this information. You've got all of the standard information that you would have collected when you created the user. You can also add information such as job titles, emergency contact information, their date of birth, when they started within your business, and potentially an end date if you're going to maybe make that user inactive. The start address and end address fits in with our smart routing functionality. So you can have potentially a home address for one of your users. So if you're looking at scheduling their jobs to be as efficient as possible, coming from their home address and then returning back home or from your office, this links in with the job scheduling functionality and smart routing. Within the permissions, we've been through that in other webinars and is quite straightforward in the sense of what you're allowing the user to be able to do. You'll see down the bottom of the user profile, you have the ability to be able to capture the user's signature. So this can be used in forms to upload as an image. So it can be a nice, neat signature that's used on your reports, or they can sign obviously at the time. We do also have functionality for form variables. So in this instance, we've got a variable for a license number, which means when a user is filling in a form and it's asking for a license number and is connected to that user variable, that information will populate automatically. So you may further this type of functionality by having the supervisor's name and the supervisor's email address. So for something, and we'll look at it as we go through today's session, if we're looking at an injury or an incident notification, you may have that user's supervisor's name and or email address populate into the form so that they can be automatically notified. So it really just helps streamline the process. And when you're thinking about filling in forms, the more information that can populate automatically, the easier it is for the person who's filling it out. And obviously with email addresses that you're wanting those actions to happen, no one has to make sure that the email address is correct, nor do they have to make sure that it's sent to various people. So in simple scenarios, the variable is a really good option. If it is something where you have a larger business and there are a lot more users to manage and people are moving from supervisor to supervisor, you might find that a database lookup within your form is a much easier way to manage it, but there's lots of options available. Within the user profile, we have qualifications, training, and uploads. And each of these are quite similar in the way that they work, and they're based on that functionality that we have within resources on your account, as well as documents within a CRM profile. So you can upload qualifications of your users within the qualifications tab. Training, same sort of concept. And you've got the functionality to be able to have an expiry date. So the expiry date is going to notify when that particular document is due to expire, expired, and overdue. So if they've got a first aid certificate, for example, you can make sure that those qualifications and training elements are kept up to date by simple notifications, and also being able to look back at all of your users or individual users and see what qualifications they do have. So again, with training, same functionality applies. You can upload those documents, put in descriptions as need be. You can also upload documents in relation to the user. Same concept applies, and this may be their original resume. So they obviously weren't a user when they originally applied with you, but you can keep that as a record should you wish. You can add further notes in relation to that particular user on the file as well. So it may be something that you have an incident, or something that you've spoken to them from a performance perspective. You may wish to have that included in here. User information is visible only to people who have permission to be able to view and edit users. So just remember that from a hierarchy perspective. If your user has logged on to the Formatize app, you can send notifications through the portal as well. In this instance, this particular user hasn't logged on, but simple functionality to be able to send a ping notification to an individual user. So training and qualifications, as I mentioned, really easy to be able to update information within the user profile itself. Heading over to forms now, and as I mentioned earlier, with the form bank and the different forms that we have available. So each of the different form templates that we've built have been built in a way that is quite generic in nature, in the sense that the flexibility is really within the form builder itself to allow users to be able to upload a form that is what they're after, and then further make any changes to that form as they need to. So the form bank has lots of different categories, and again, also lots of different form templates available. So for this particular example, we're going to have a look at health and safety. So the concept of the form bank is to be able to have a look at a form. So for example, if we have a look at a site safety checklist, you can look at that end PDF. So it's showing you what this particular form looks like when it's being completed. And you can decide from here if that's the type of form that you're after. It's got that concept of whatever the title of that form is, for you to be able to upload it into your account and make further changes into the form bank. So we will jump into a form template so that you can have a look at some things that are quite often used in the safety aspect. And we talk about different ways that safety forms can be used, whether it's a pre-start, for example, that's done as part of a job process. So having a form on a job, you can have a job form, which many of you may have seen already. You can have a web form attached, and then there's also the safety form element. So the safety form is indicated when you're building the form. Obviously, you can make that change at any time. So if we click onto a form template, you'll be able to indicate in the form type if it's a safety form or not. So this means that when you're booking a job, you can create the rule, as well as through the job type, that this safety form has to be completed before the job form can be started, or if it just needs to be done as part of the process. So if your safety form is a pre-start, for example, where something may come up that they need to stop work because it's not safe to proceed, by having the rule on the job to say that the safety form has to be completed first, you're kind of ensuring that the person who's filling out the form is not just going straight into the job form, get started, and then they realize that it's not safe, or even worse, that there's an incident that occurs. So being able to ensure that the safety form is completed first, you can have elements within your form that's going to stop the person from proceeding. And we'll go through some of those ways that that can be done when we look at this form template. So if we go into the form builder, we'll be able to see all of the elements of this form that's already been built, and obviously make any changes as need be. So this particular form, and we'll have a look at it in more detail when we're filling it out, but it does have a lot of event functionalities. And when we talk about event functionality, that's where we're looking at something like a multiple choice option. It's going to have other questions appear based on that particular answer. So if we have a look in the cause of an incident, you'll see that these elements are grayed out, which means that they're invisible by default. So you can see that the visible box is unticked. And we've made an event on each of these. So you can see the lightning bolt that will tell you what question is triggering this particular field to appear. They don't need to be straight after each other. They can be anywhere within the form. And that's where the go-to button helps you see what's triggering these particular further questions that you have. So quite simply, if you're looking at the triggering question in the event in the field settings, you simply choose the answer that you want, and you can choose multiple if need be, and you would simply drag over the make visible. You'll see the green tick appear, and that means that that is what's going to appear should that answer be unsafe. With the other elements that you have that are already invisible, they won't see them unless you have that triggering question appear. So it makes it really easy to fill in a form, and you're only seeing the questions that you need to see. Obviously, that is applicable for lots of different scenarios as well. You can make that question or next set on that event something like must answer. So if there are extra pieces of information that you want that question to appear, you can also ensure that the form cannot be submitted unless that answer is completed. So all of the form elements can be edited. Lots of things that can be changed quite simply if you feel that there's a question that needs to be added in, using the toolbox down the left-hand side of the form and simply dragging in whatever element it is that you need. You'll see also that there's different sections throughout the form about the injury or incident. In this particular form, it covers off a few different concepts. You'll see here as well that we've got a question about how severe the injury was. And quite often we talk about, okay, who needs to know that this particular incident happened? So this is something that you can trigger by this particular question. So like I mentioned earlier with the variables on the user profile, you can have an extra email address appear that would be the supervisor's email address. In this example, I'm going to show you how to just do it on the condition in the action. So if we have a look at this particular object name, we see that it's here. So the object name can be adjusted. It will by default put in for this example, it would be radio 1, for example, 2, 3, 4, the more radio buttons you put into your form. So as you can imagine, if you've got quite a large form or lots of different elements, when you're making the action, it makes it much easier if you've named the objects so that you know exactly which one you need to select. So we'll just do the action in a new tab so that you can see how to create it. So it may be that if there is a very serious incident, for example, there's always a particular person within the business that needs to be notified on that. So you can see there's all already an email action on this particular form. So we can add in another one where we're wanting that to be conditioned. So we still want to send the email PDF, and we're going to say that it was a serious incident. Then it's going to send the standard report, which is what we want. We can pick up any of the information throughout the form itself by using control space and picking up the placeholders. So we can say the type of incident. By saying it's a serious incident, that's potentially going to get the attention of the recipient. So we can name both the PDF, and the subject name. Most instances, people have the same for both of those, but totally up to you on what you want to have there. With the email content, if it's going internally, you can have an internal notification that will take them straight to the PDF in the portal, totally up to you. You'll see then we have the option to be able to add the condition. So we're going to add in the condition of injury severity. And then we're going to say that if it equals or contains the serious response, then we want that recipient to be just a fixed email address. So we're not getting something from within the form. And we're going to send that to the GM. Okay, so once that's saved, that means that if the particular question about the severity of the incident is indicated to be very serious, then regardless of all of the other actions that are happening in the form, the GM or this fixed email address is going to receive a copy. So you can make sure that the people who need to be notified about particular incidents, maybe that the GM doesn't need to know about a minor incident when somebody needs a Band-Aid, but obviously when it's very serious, you want to make sure that the right people are informed and they're able to do those actions. So it can be multiple people that can receive this email. So you can add further recipients, or you can use a comma to be able to separate all those email addresses. So we just jump back into the form builder again and show some other functionality that you can have, especially around the concept of labels and notifying from an events perspective. So I'll just show you, pop it down here for now. So this may be a section that you already have within your form, but you might have a simple question in your form: is safe to proceed? So adding the question, in this particular instance, I don't want not applicable to be a possible response. So I can say just yes or no. And then I can have a label. So a label allows you to put free text information. So it's not necessarily a question that needs to be answered. It's just some information that they need to be aware of. So stop work and contact your supervisor. So this can be made bigger. You can also change the text, you can change the color, you can change the positioning, lots of different options that are available. So this particular label we would have as invisible. And then in the trigger question, is it safe to proceed? We're going to say, if it is not safe to proceed, we want to make this visible. So that would be when you're filling in the form that the person who's filling in is prompted to do something. You can further this by having contact information within here. So again, if you're using something like the user variable where you're having the supervisor's name or contact information populate into the form. For each different person who fills it in, they may need to contact somebody else. So by having those variables within your form, you can have that populate into a label. So if we were to use a text box, you don't need to have this as visible nor on the PDF. So this may be supervisor name. If we had a user variable for that supervisor's name, or we can just have the company's information. So we can have the company mobile. So we can details just to make it make sense. So with having that populate, you can change your label and use the @ symbol. And bring in the company details. You can pull in company information from the @ symbol as well, but there's lots of different ways that you can do things. So depending on whether or not you're trying to get some information specifically about the user, or if you're just trying to look at information that's held on the account as a whole through your company settings, the options are there for that to be able to happen. Okay, so with different reports and forms that you're completing, you may wish to send further information. So one thing that you may do from an incident report, if your company has a care or employee assistance program within your business, you might choose that when something is raised within a form, so this could be triggered again by conditions within the form, or just it's sent every time, things that they need to do or be aware of the support that is available to them. So much the way that you have the conditions on the action. So when it was a serious incident, we were emailing a particular email address. You can do the same sorts of things with brochures. And this, as I said before, how safety is using our form technology, you can use this in other ways. So a job report, you may send a brochure to a client. Same sorts of things apply here, where you may have a care package send automatically when you send off this report. So that's by attaching a brochure. So in the actions again, you're able to send an attachment when you send off the PDF. So in this particular example, we have a copy going to the user. You can add a resource to that. So you may have something within your account already where you're going to add a brochure. So whatever that may be, this doesn't matter what the example is. You can also have a condition. So you might have different brochures for different types of incidents, or whatever has happened within the form. So much like we had the condition on the severity of the incident, same goes with having a question in your form about what brochure you want to attach. So again, using the condition field within resources, it allows you to control what's sent automatically. So that PDF sending throughout the form can have lots of different types of versions or attachments within those versions be sent to the person who is having the incident, or further interested parties that are raised within the form. So lots of functionality there as well. SWIMs are another element of the form itself. So quite often their SWIMs can be quite big. So it may be that your SWIMs again is a resource that is attached when you're doing a sign-off on a pre-start to say that you have adhered to particular different SWIMs document, or you could build the SWIMs as a whole within that form builder and get that produced. So the PDF that is generated by default in our standard format, if you wish to have it appear like the SWIMs that you have built previously, or you have on other media, you can contact our professional services team to have custom forms built so they can build the report to look exactly the same as your example. So we do it quite often for government and other legislative types of forms, so we can make it view exactly the same way as you would view it if you were to get it from those departments individually. So that's an option for you as well. So quite flexible in how forms can work. Another element that can be used within the form process when you're looking at incidents, for example, if you're not looking to use our workflow process, you can have different statuses on your PDF. So for instance, you may have your PDF default as a submission status of pending, for example. It may be that is going to, again, send different communications. So you can trigger, as I mentioned before, conditionally on the form action, but you can also do that on form statuses. And I'll show you that again in 1 second. So the status of that form may be pending. You're going to do an investigation and put some extra information within the form, and then you're going to change it to complete. So without using workflows, you can still have a good indication of what needs to be dealt with if you're looking at injuries that need to have corrective actions. So within the form actions, you can see that when you send the PDF, by default, it's not going to require a status, nor is it going to set a particular status. So it may be that this will happen when the status is pending and your form by default is coming in as pending, and then it's going to change it to a different status, or you're going to do that manually to trigger other things to happen. Lots of functionality there of where you're able to have the flow of your process still in a simple perspective and still having that automation be able to be applied. All of our form fields within the forms, whether they're safety forms or any other type of forms, can be voice to text. So using the microphone on the keypad of your device, they'll be able to speak and have that response converted into text. So quite an easy way to be able to fill in your forms as well. So within the form, once the form is completed, it goes into submitted forms, just like all of the other forms that you complete within Formatize. So whether it's a safety form, a normal form that you have on a job or not on a job, or a web form, they all come into the submitted form space. So again, you can create your own tab. So if you're looking at just your incident reports, for example, you can create your own tab to see all of those together. Again, you're able to filter and search using the smart tables to be able to see potentially only the things that are outstanding. So you can have a look at all of the incidents that still need to be resolved by using one of those forms statuses to be able to look at your pending and okay, complete, all of those options that are available to make sure that you're managing everything that has been raised. Within each of the form submissions, you can also have a look and see the history of the form and also the log. So this is applicable to all form templates or form submissions that you have. So in the history tab, you're able to see every time the form is viewed, submitted, edited, and the like. Also with the email log, you're able to see that once those conditions have been met based on your actions, when that was sent. So you're able to get a true indication of exactly what's happened with that particular form, so you can make sure that you're being as compliant as possible. Form reporting is also available on any form template. So you may have heard of this before, but form reporting allows you to be able to collect the metadata and push that as a report. So you can select your form template. From there, you can do a date range search or just update, and that will bring in your submissions. So if you've got a lot of submissions on a particular form template already, it will just show you a preview of a few forms. So don't worry, all of the reports are there based on your range. You can choose to add all columns of the particular form to be able to see everything that's been collected. So some people would add all and then work their way back and remove any of the columns that they don't want to have. So this is each of the field questions that you have within your form. Once you've done that, you can then create that as a template. So you can create a new template. I've done a sample one here already. You'll see that when you choose that sample, you've got the columns that you want to have on your particular report, and you can schedule that to be sent automatically on a regular basis. So adding in the email address or addresses, subject, file name, and then adding a schedule. So you can have last day of the month, every week, every day, a report sent of all of those forms that have been submitted. Once that's been done, you can also edit that schedule should you change on how often you want those reports to be sent. So once you've set up the schedule, you'll be able to edit that. Resources can be used, we've mentioned those already a little bit today, but one last thing to go through, just making sure that you're aware that they can be added onto the account and visible to different user groups, as well as having the expiry notification. So quite often clients talk to me about having a folder of some sort in each of the different vehicles that they have for their business, and they're continuously printing out new versions and updating them, and they're getting lost. So all of those documents that you would have in said folder can be uploaded into resources and available to the users on their device. So they'll be able to view those documents as well as being able to email them. And just like all of the resource and document elements throughout the rest of your account, you've got the functionality to be able to have the expiry notifications. So you can control what user group or groups receive the expiry notification when it's due to expire, expired, and overdue. So really handy to be able to version control and make sure everyone is looking at the right policy and procedure, whether that's SDSs, whether it's SWIMs, all of those resources that you want them to have access to are really easy to find. I hope today's session has been helpful for you. I will pop up the Q&A. If you had any questions, feel free to add them in there if I haven't covered anything off. If there's anything further that we can help you with, as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And we look forward to seeing you at the next event.